Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Public Facilities and Safety Committee. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. Public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Sarah, could you call roll for us, please?
Councilmember Tabernick,
Present.
Councilmember Reeds,
Here.
Councilmember Lawson,
Mark Lawson here.
Councilmember Howard,
Here.
Councilmember Glover, Councilmember Dawson, Councilmember Brown,
Here.
Vice Chairman McEllen,
Here.
Chairman Passanet,
Present.
Committee Chair Cunningham,
Present.
and Committee Vice Chair Bartholomew. He's absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
First and seconded. Any objection?
No.
The agenda is approved. Number 5, approval of the minutes from April 24th, 2023.
I'll move they be approved.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
No.
Any objection? Those will be approved with no objection. And we'll move on to number 6. It's going to be citizens' comments. Sarah, do we have any citizens' comments today? Rena?
No, sir.
No? Is there anybody else that did not sign up that wanted to speak for citizens' comment today, online or in person?
No, sir.
All right, we'll close the citizen comment and move right into the agenda items. We do have quite a few of them. There's going to be a couple presentations on a few, so we'll just go ahead and get started with those. Number 7 is discussion of Reimagine Reboat Road. Can I get a motion, please, to start that discussion?
I'll make a motion to start the discussion.
Yeah, and I will second that.
I believe that's going to be done by Eric, correct?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We've got Vanna handing out material for this. So again, if we get one point across, it's for everyone to join the website, which is reimaginereboroad.com, and also take the survey. So the citizen survey is going to be open until sometime towards the end of June. So we want everyone to be able to jump on that and be able to take that survey. It's not only people that live or own a business on Rebo Road, it's really anybody that travels through that corridor. We really want feedback. So again, encourage anyone to take that. We will also be posting that material on it's on that website. You're gonna see it up on the screen as well. There's a QR code. If we can scroll just down just a little bit, that'll give everyone the opportunity. One is for the webpage, the other one is for the survey itself. So take a second for anybody that wants to take that or scan that. Go ahead with the other slide. So we kicked this off, the Reimagine Rebo Road project, in the fall of last year. So we brought Stantec, which is one of our traffic on-calls, to come and provide for us the planning and traffic engineering for this Reimagine Rebo Road, which is really a new vision for Rebo. And it goes all the way from Boundary, the 5.5 miles, to the Russell Belt Bridge. So we are looking at, and again, travels through multi-jurisdictional areas, so City of Beaufort, Town of Port Royal, as well as Beaufort County. So we are looking at a complete street design for this corridor. And what complete street means is basically design where we're incorporating the needs for all users, all abilities, all ages to be able to use and walk, bike, drive through the corridor safely. So we're looking at that, basically at that 5.5 miles and coming up with the planning and the traffic engineering associated with it. So more of like that concept design piece is what we aim to get at the end of this. Want to go to the next one? So this is part of the planning schedule. This is a regurgitation of what we gave at the symposium, which was in April, but basically we started this process off in December last year, engaged our partners, which is again the city of Beaufort and the town of Port Royal. They're the initial stakeholders that we have moving this along with us. We did an initial investigation with the internal group, which at the county included both engineering as well as our planning department. And we did a road audit of basically that entire corridor. So we stopped at specific locations, looked at what the needs were, looked at where deficiencies were, basically determined what those would look like, and came up with different concepts and different things as we moved into a public symposium. Public symposium was held on April 20th. It was over at the TCL campus. We had about 100 people show up, so really good turnout. A lot of people actually walked over to the TCL campus, had to cross Rebo Road, so they got to experience that in person. The main feedback that we got from the individuals that day really had to do with the fact that the county didn't already have a plan in place, that we were truly asking for their feedback. So again, they said basically a breath of fresh air to be able to have a part of what that overall design looks like. So held that on April 20th. We are now moving on, as you can see on that schedule, to a multi-day workshop, which is going to be scheduled towards the end of June. So again, this is going to be a 3-day workshop. We encourage anyone from the public that wants to give any kind of design input for what this overall design is going to look like to stop by. You don't have to be there for all 3 days. We're just asking people to come in, be able to come in over their lunch hour. 5 or 10 minutes is plenty. But again, want to open that up just so that everyone, we're giving the window of opportunity for people to come in and voice their opinions. So again, more to come on that, but that is scheduled for sometime late in June. And then from that point, the consultant will be working on their design, and we'll have an open house a little bit later in the summer, late summer, and then they'll come up with their final design in the fall of this year. So about an 8-month process overall. We're going to move from this, really utilizing this as a concept design, and then moving towards full design based upon what we hear back from the public. So again, more to come on that. There's a couple more slides on this. This gets into a little more of the details. Again, a little bit tough to see, but it's really the corridor. This is looking at the biking conditions and basically feedback that we receive back from the public. We've got the Spanish Moss Trail, which runs parallel, but a little bit of a distance away from Rebo Road. Again, that's the great biking corridor. We don't have really good conditions for biking along Rebo Road, so again, just something that we're looking for. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be adding bike lanes to Rebo Road. It's just trying to find whatever that balance looks like. Is it too far away to ask folks if they're riding a bike to use Spanish Moss Trail and then utilize some key connections back over Rebo Road, or exactly what that looks like? So again, just more along the lines of, we don't have this design set, we're asking for that feedback. So then the next one deals with pedestrian accommodations. And so this again is sort of what you would expect. We have sidewalks that are on the back of curb. They're 4 foot wide. People don't necessarily feel safe. It's not super accommodating. So again, as you can see from the survey, it's a little bit hard to see, but basically that's in yellow, stating that it's just in fair condition. So we do have accommodations. They just aren't necessarily conducive to families feeling like they can walk along the corridor. So, and then we've got a couple of pedestrian crashes that have occurred along the corridor as well. So then we'll look at the very last one, which has to do with the motorists. So this is just more of a heat map of where we're seeing crashes. And again, not to any surprise, it's in and around Ladies Island Drive. So again, there's a lot of crashes that we have there. But as you can see from the trends, actually 50% of the overall angle crashes happen right there at the TCL campus. So a little bit of a surprise there, especially with the turn lanes that we already see at that intersection. But again, this kind of just tells you, see a lot of angle crashes out there. A lot of that comes from multiple driveways, no access management, that type of thing. But again, those are typically your more critical type crashes where you're seeing injuries or even potentially fatalities. So again, all that to say, we're looking at this from a statistical perspective as well as a feedback from the community. So again, if you take anything away from this, please hop on the website, reimaginereboroad.com, and please take the survey, which again will be open through the end of June. So again, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to commend the group, your staff, and also the facilitator at that meeting. Councilman Glover was there and I was there. It was a really good public meeting, one of the best I've been to in many, many years. And you got a lot of good feedback, I think, from the public as a result.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Eric?
No, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. All right, so no action needs to be taken on that. It's just for discussion. So we move on to number 8, and it is recommended approval of an ordinance by title only, authorizing the county administrator to execute the necessary documents and provide funding for the purchase of a portion of real property located on Highway 170, number R600-008-000-005-0000. I think that's Brittany. It's gonna,
Yeah, this is Brittany and Jared.
perfect.
Yeah.
Give me false information.
Yeah, well, she just did a switch on me on the walk up to the podium. So I thought it was going to be Brittany, but it ended up being me. So this is just real quick what this is. This property is a property directly adjacent to the cooler property that was just closed this week. So the 100-acre parcel that we bought for law enforcement center, what this property is and how it came upon us is Oldfield community actually owns this property. And we coordinated and talked to Oldfield as we were talking to about the law enforcement center and the cooler tract. And then after that, they reached back out to us and said, hey, would there be any interest from the county taking a look at this? So the interest is that, you know what, it's in the center of the county. It's right next to the 100 acres, which should be sufficient, but what other opportunities could be presented if we had this property available? One first idea that's come across is our facilities master plan. Obviously, an off-site law enforcement center was discussed, but then the opportunity for potentially a center of the county regional administration campus. So don't know if that's of council's decision, whether that's something you want to look at, but this is just providing us the opportunity. It could be other services as well, but that was sort of the thought process to saying, okay, if this is available, it's in the center of the county, it could be used for multiple purposes, but this could be a potential use that makes sense. So that's kind of the start, and I'll kind of hand the rest of it to Brittany, and she can kind of get into the details.
And thank you, Jared, for filling in. My computer wasn't uploading the visuals. So, I believe I should be sharing the screen now. So we are still negotiating the fine details of this with Oldfield. At this point, there are 2 priorities to Oldfield in our negotiations. One, Oldfield has a backdoor access to their community. You probably pass it every time you come down 170. And there's a very small sign, and it says construction entrance on it. Oldfield would like for that road to be maintained and there for their community to have that backdoor access. So in negotiations, we have agreed to provide them with a secondary entrance to their property. That entrance is going to align generally in this area where I'm highlighting here. And that is because it is being proposed by Jared to realign certain roads there and have a light intersection. So it would make sense for their community to be able to enter through a light access on the backside of the property. The second thing that Oldfield has requested is that they had a desire to use their 20 acres for the purposes of establishing an equestrian trail. They do have, as everybody sees, the horse stables in the front of their community. So rather than them keep the 20 acres, which I will show you in another visual here in a minute, rather than keeping the 20 acres, they're going to sell us the 20 acres. And in return, we are also going to allow them to have an equestrian trail over the cooler track wetlands, which is what I'm showing you here. So you can see the dots on the left side of the screen. Those are all wetlands. We cannot build in them. So rather than just keeping them vacant, we discussed with Oldfield, and they would be paying, they would be responsible for all the costs associated with it. All we would be doing is providing them an easement to construct the walking trails for the horses through that area. Any questions on those two items? Okay.
It just may be me, but I don't even know what I'm looking at.
So I wanted to explain those two items to you, just so you understood what they were asking for. So one is the backdoor access to their community, and two is going to be equestrian trails. So from there, I'm going to show you on a GIS map. Is it not?
Okay.
So
That last one that you were looking at, that was the cooler
Awesome.
track.
That was the
100
cooler
acres.
track.
Gotcha.
So what you're looking at here is our GIS mapping system. This is Highway 170. The cooler track, which you were just seeing, is this blue area here,
Okay.
okay? What we are proposing to purchase is is abutting that property here.
Okay. And how
So
many
it
acres
this
is that?
part. It is 20.
20. Oh, okay. I heard
Okay.
20, but okay.
So that's why I wanted you to kind of understand the access. Right now, you can see on this map, there is an access road here.
And their main entrance is over
That,
there to the
their
right.
main entrance is on the other side of the cooler track. So this is their backdoor entrance that I was speaking of earlier. We would allow them to continue the use of that backdoor access until said point where we actually do our construction. As was discussed when purchasing and negotiating the cooler track, Jared and his team are working on realigning and putting in a traffic light here on 170 for access to the law enforcement center and or any other administrative buildings. So what Oldfield would be, what Oldfield has negotiated with us is that we would realign that back entrance to go with the light.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
So you're
Sure.
gonna move it?
So we would move it.
And where's the equestrian trail going to be?
The equestrian trail is on the other side. So the equestrian trail would be through this area here, which is the cooler track. So these are all wetlands over here.
Oh, I see. So that trail's not gonna be on the property, the 20 acres, it's on the 100-acre property.
Correct.
Got it.
So that's kind of where I started a little bit backwards from how I typically do, but I wanted you to be able to understand where we were going with the equestrian so you could see it on this map here.
And does Oldfield own across?
So Oldfield's main entrance is,
No, I mean, the property, the access road they're using now.
yes,
The property to the.
to the right.
Yeah, right there.
This is all their property here.
As well?
This is
That's
the
what we're
20 acres
proposing.
that we're purchasing.
Oh.
That's the 20 acres, yeah.
Okay,
So
now I see-
this
I see
blue
the
marked
20 acres.
area,
I got
that
you
is the
now.
20 acres we would be proposing to
No, they don't
purchase.
own the next.
They do not own any further down. That is owned by another individual. I believe it's
Right.
A and NG Developers LLC. So they own further down. So we are not in discussions with them. That's separate parcel. Now,
And what you're showing me right now is only 20 acres?
correct.
Wow, okay. Thank you.
Any questions at this point?
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any before I go?
I had a question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Do we have an idea how much wet and dry land there is here? So how much is uplands and how much is,
So I have, there are certain surveys that show differing amounts. So in working with Jared as well as with Neil Desai, our visuals and what we have available to us on GIS, it only shows around approximately 3 acres of wetlands on the property. There's other surveys that show a differing amount. We are going to hire a wetland consultant before the time of closing to come out and actually put feet on the ground to determine that amount. Clearly, we do not want to be purchasing property that's 50, 67%
And the
wetlands.
second part would be, you mentioned briefly about us moving their service road. So
Yes.
have we got any estimated costs on the moving of the service road? Because that might be as much as what the cost of the property is.
So
So
we would
just-
only be paying for our cost as far as putting in the road. That road will be part of the road structure system that would be put in place regardless. So other than the connection directly to their back gate, Jared and his team and all the architects would be designing the law enforcement center and any additional admin buildings, so it would just be part of the planning process. Either way, there'll be a road on our property coming from the light.
Right, but the plans I've seen for the law enforcement don't take the road the whole way back. So it'd be,
That would be the cost we would have to endure, yes.
so going back and then going, you know.
Yeah, at the overall scope of the cost, the law enforcement center per the facilities master plan is a really expensive cost in the close to $90 million is what it's called out for. So the relative cost is to build that little bit of road is very small.
I had a question about the walking trail. Would it be deeded to them, or would it,
No.
and would we allow other members of the public to use it for their horses?
Again, some of the details are still being discussed,
Okay.
but it is not our intention to have that open to the public. It would be an easement only held by them. And that
I
is
have a
because
problem
there's
with
no
that.
there's no other access to that
Trail, but they're equestrian
but
center.
through their equestrian center.
Anybody else with a couple questions?
There, if I may, there is one more element to this. I want to make sure everybody had their questions out as in regards to the equestrian and the access point.
I have one question.
Okay.
I'm assuming that the neighborhood is well aware of what we're planning to build there prior to them selling us this property.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I will say we've had multiple conversations throughout the whole weekend with their HOA as well as their legal
Yeah,
representative.
but we're making that clear to them. Our intentions are to put a
Yes.
form of government buildings.
Yes.
Basically in your backyard.
Yes.
I'll say it. My other question is that access road, I see that's going, it looks like it's going between two houses.
Yes.
Are we gonna be connecting to that existing opening, or are we gonna be
No.
creating a new opening between two other houses?
We have discussed with the HOA, and again, I've only talked to their representatives as well as their legal counsel, that the road would actually be a straight cut through.
Okay,
And it's up to them to communicate to their neighborhood
Homeowners.
as far as where it's falling. But we did propose that it fall in this general area here that I'm circling, only because that is a straight shot to where the proposed light intersection is going to be.
right. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, so the last element to this, Oldfield is part of a PUD, and in that PUD agreement, the most up-to-date map is a map of 2006. In that master plan, as well as in the PUD, it was approved by county council, whereby Oldfield actually has to donate to the county 6 acres of this 20-acre lot. So they are required, prior to getting any permits, so assume we are not purchasing the property. The moment that Oldfield applies for a permit and a permit is issued, they are required to donate to the county 6 acres. So that is why these negotiations has been a little bit more unique than most, because they're required to give us that acreage regardless if we're the buyers or not. In this situation, we just happen to be the buyers. So we are having to go back and forth with our appraiser to make sure that we have the appropriate fair market value to our benefit, as well as, to be fair to Oldfield. Any questions on that aspect?
So we shouldn't be paying for 20 acres. We should be paying somewhere between 16 to 14, depending on where we agree with them.
Correct.
Okay.
In the negotiations, there will be 6 acres of value of some way. Now,
Right.
in saying that, Oldfield has asked that they have some type of reassurance that a fire/EMS substation be on this property somewhere. They've had discussions with previous councils. It is mentioned heavily in their PUD that a fire station was to be located here. So, again, we are working with them as far as a first responders substation of some sort there. It will more than likely end up being a reverter clause in our deeds that will be the exact same language that is used in the PUD. So, The PUD requires 6 acres being donated. At the time of the donation, the county has 10 years to build a government facility on that property. So we would be using the exact same language that's already been proposed, and it would be in our deeds.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
does the data show they need a station in there?
I've talked to John Robinson about this, our director of our ACA of Public Safety. From an EMS standpoint, it's close. From a fire standpoint, it's close. It's just a matter of prioritization and some more data to verify. Obviously, funding is a decision point for both of those.
Anybody else? I mean, I would think with the growth go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just saying, I would think with the growth happening we're expecting on 170, close isn't gonna last very long. Eventually, we're gonna get there anyways, so for once, we're actually ahead of the game, theoretically.
Yep.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, or, Mr. Glover.
The last comment you made is sort of interesting, and I'm trying to process all that right now. It's 20 acres. They're supposed to give us 6 acres. In return for the 6 acres, we are guaranteed somewhere in the language somewhere that we're supposed to put some type of station there. So for me, it's a whole field is really getting a whale of a deal.
Well, they're having to donate 6 acres of property without any value. They do not get compensated for those 6 acres, whether we are the buyers or not.
Then let me ask you this, the 6 acres, are we to put, was the 6 acres for a facility?
Yes.
So okay. They're giving us the 6 acres and we're gonna put a facility on there, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I
And again,
understand.
that was determined back in 1999.
I
So,
understand.
Well,
So,
and-
are we obligated to even take this offer?
are we obligated to take this offer? No.
And if we don't take
Council
the
can say no.
offer, there'll be,
And still
we
required to
still have
put
to
it on.
require to pay.
It's still required to put a facility on it, otherwise it still reverts back to them if we don't.
And from a facility standpoint, again, from thinking facility master plan, another building that we have in the queue as a potential project is a EMS headquarters. So maybe, again, this is a very central location within our county geographically. So with the 100 acres plus the 20 acres, there's a lot of capabilities for various buildings there. So maybe that's another option. It's not just a substation, but potentially a headquarters that has a substation, fire, and EMS combined, potentially. So there's a lot of opportunities and options with these combined
I like
lots.
that submission. Thank you, sir.
I would remind everybody, over 20 years ago, we had a chance to buy the cooler track for a much smaller sum of money, and we chose not to do that at that point in time. The vision wasn't there. We're now taking a look at the growth in this county. The vision is there. We want to centralize many things because it's dead center in the county. Therefore, I'm going to fully recommend that we move forward with this ordinance.
That is the first motion to move forward,
I'll second it.
and a second.
I do have a question. What's the approximate cost of this? You know
In
what it's gonna cost.
negotiations.
We are
Just a ballpark.
negotiating a ballpark.
We can tell them what we bought cooler track for.
Exactly. I was gonna say, we bought the cooler track for
5
It
million.
was valued at 6.1 and we bought it for 5.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it was approximately $60,000 an acre, so that kind of gives you a ballpark of where this would fit in, minus less the 6 acres of donated property.
Do we have any objection to move this forward to county council for first reading?
No objection.
This will be done with no objection. Item number 9,
You want counsel?
recommended approval of a resolution and approval to enter into IGA with the town of Hilton Head for an expenditure of transportation impact fees on the adaptive traffic signal management system. We have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion? We've talked about this quite a bit before. It's just speeding up that process, correct, Jared? To move this forward?
This is one of the
Items.
items in the MKSK recommendations
Yeah.
that we consented to do. with the county.
Can this be done with no objection? And this is done with no objection as well. Number 10, recommended approval of resolution establishing a tax advisory committee to plan for a future sales tax program. Jared, that's you, correct, sir?
Yes, it is. So this, we've been talking about sales tax and in looking at sales tax for a potential referendum in 2024, November 2024. We've talked initially with the municipalities at a staff level and kind of laid out the concept that we've talked about here at council with what a 25-year vision would look like and what would be involved in that vision. Even the discussion of the super penny, which is potentially more than one referendum that could potentially address not only roads, but roads, buildings, and schools. So one of the feedback that we got from presenting to the town managers was, hey, before we can really bring this to our council members, it'd be really nice to hear something from county council, what the real intentions, and put some actual first steps. So this is a necessary first step in general, but at this point it provides us the opportunity to really start putting some pen to paper and planning what that would look like and having a committee to help develop and make a recommendation back to council. One thing that this committee is a little bit different than the committee that was established last year. So last year, council made a transportation advisory committee. It was 17 members, which was one from each county district and then one from each municipality. This one is based off so the only one of the three statutes between transportation capital projects and education capital that require a advisory committee or a commission is capital projects. The other two, it doesn't require. You can do it if you choose to, but it's not required. So we're using the most stringent state statute to set this up. And the idea is that this committee could serve as all three if we so choose to. So the requirements per the capital project sales tax statute is very specific on what that committee looks like. It is a 6-member committee, 3 of which are selected from county council, appointed by county council, and 3 are appointed by the municipalities. Furthermore, it's very specific on how the municipalities select theirs. It's based off an appointed index, which basically takes in population, and it goes through a calculation and determines what that is. Based off our population, there would be 1 appointed from the town of Hilton Head, 1 from the town of Bluffton, and then the 3rd one would be appointed at large, i.e. our northern municipalities. So that's sort of the layout of the committee, and that was the reasoning how we got to the committee as a 6-member committee, and that's what's in front of you as a proposed next step to discuss sales tax.
Any questions or comments for Jared?
I'd like to make a motion if we go forward.
Get that motion?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah.
do have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Jared, I'm trying to put my head around
Yeah,
this.
sorry we're
too,
throwing a
but-
lot at you tonight. So.
No. This committee here, in particular, one of the language you have here, our schools throughout the community. I mean, they'll be planning for schools as well, or they'll be planning for the infrastructure for schools.
Yes.
Or I mean, because you don't have quote unquote any necessary representation from the schools specifically. So I'm just wondering.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we have had some initial conversations with the schools. The schools may or may not be part of that
Okay.
long term. And this committee is going to help us. We obviously at staff level still continue to talk with the schools.
Sure.
The concept, there's 2 state statutes that allow you to develop schools. One is a school district tax, which is basically offsets operation cost. And then the second one is a capital project tax, education capital project tax, which helps offset building costs. So what we've discussed in different meetings has been an education capital. Obviously, the schools would be involved, but it would also allow for higher education. Both TCL and
sure.
USC Beaufort would be an allowable expense in that occasion.
Would there be advisory to this, or?
So they
It
could
could
be
be?
added, so
Sure. Okay,
the reason, as staff, we don't have it more than 6 is because that state statute on the capital project, which is the only one that requires it, is very direct. It doesn't say 7, it doesn't say 5, it says 6, and this is who your appointees are.
no, I like the number 6.
Yep.
I like an even number. It's simply because if you're gonna move something forward, you gotta have at least 4 people agreeing.
That's right.
So it's not a simple majority, but it's, yeah. So I like the number 6 now.
Yep.
My only concern is that I feel that I'm being slighted north of the Broad,
Mhm.
because you have 2 distinct representatives from Hilton Head, but you only have 1 from the city and town of Port Royal combined.
Well, from the county representatives, your 3 can be from anywhere in the county. So if they wanted to have more of your county representation from north of the Broad, that is completely a decision of the council.
You get three unincorporated area appointees countywide.
I got that. You're going to my, you're going to my question. Should we put that in language, Mr. Chairman? That, be 2 from north of the Broad, just to even things up?
No, you have a
and 1 from
statutory
south, but you get-
requirement.
Hmm?
There is a statutory requirement that spells out exactly how you make up this committee. That doesn't mean that the committee can only be that. That means the capital portion of the tax advisory committee must be structured that way. If the council chooses to go beyond that, like we did with the tax advisory committee for the last time we did it, we have that option.
Our recommendation would be that you stay with 6 people to keep it small and manageable for people to work with. How you all allocate your unincorporated area appointees, that'll be totally up to the council. Today, all we're asking you all to do is recommend approval of the resolution to do the plan
And
to
I'm
establish
just
the committee.
arguing. I understand, and I agree with the 6. I don't have no problem with the 6. I love the 6. I just want to make sure this council hears that there may be an imbalance north and south of the Broad. And I think if we can even that up, I think we have a good committee who's looking at the county as a whole and not necessarily north and south. And then I don't want to look at north and south, but I do know that north and south languages does exist around this table. So I was trying to balance that off to see whether council would be sort of committed to at least balancing that off by getting 2 represented out of the 3 north of the Broad. That's all my argument is. That's
Yeah,
it.
you
Well,
all
I
can.
am totally confident that this council in front of us can come to a conclusion that makes something happen for you.
Thank you, sir.
Nice touch.
You said you had a question as well?
But Mr. Glover took my question. I was wondering about the school district
Oh,
involvement, because obviously they're gonna have to build.
Yep.
And they're gonna need money.
Yeah, so
USCB until it's
so-
TCL.
Yep.
this is a starting point, and then there's coordination. Obviously, the school district they have their own needs that may not necessarily be the needs of the county, but are within the county. So there's definitely opportunity for coordination, and it may be, there's definitely coordination. I understand the statement.
And this is just to start the committee and start creating it.
Sure.
When Jared and all of us sat down in February, we talked about, are we just gonna talk about it and then try to throw something at the last minute? Or are we actually gonna put feet on the ground and get to work early so we're not behind the 8 ball like we were on the last transportation or local option sales tax or even the green space? So this is us trying to get ahead so we have plenty of time to educate the public on what we're putting forward and to actually build it with enough time where we can continue to tweak it and have those conversations. So with that said, we already have a motion to move it forward and a second. Any objection to move this forward to county council?
No.
And this will be done with no objection. Thank you, Jared. All right, number 11. A resolution authorizing the county administrator to execute the necessary documents for the purchase of a portion of real property abutting to the Hilton Head Island Airport located on Summit Drive with TMS number R5100000271A000. And Steve Perry, the Assistant Airports Director, I believe, yes?
Yes, sir, and I was gonna say, for those that don't know me, I'm Steve Perry, John's Deputy Director. A little background, Exec Air on Hilton Head Island Airport is a private entity that owns property that butts up to the airport. They have hangars on their property, and they use what's called a through-the-fence agreement to use airport taxiways and runways to fly their private aircraft. In 2017, 2018 fiscal year, the taxiway that abuts up to their property was moved closer toward their property. The property that's in question can no longer be used by Exec Air. It now houses airport lighting, sewer, things of that nature. So it was only appropriate that we go and appraise the property and purchase the property from Exec Air.
Okay.
Do we have any questions? Mr. Perry? Can I have a motion to move this forward to County Council?
So moved.
Second.
Second that.
First and a second. Any objection?
No.
And this will be moved forward to County Council.
Just quickly, how many acres is there?
It's, let me,
Probably 1/10 of an acre?
oh, it's, yeah, about that. It was valued at 19,000, so.
Yeah, it's not much.
Number 12, recommended approval of a hangar fee increase at Hilton Head Airport and Beaufort Executive Airport.
Yes, sir. So every other year, to keep up with the growing economy, keeping up with things that are going on in the economy, things like maintenance fees, upgrading some of the hangars out there, changing from regular old incandescent lights to LEDs, things like that. Every other year, we'd like to try to get imposed a 5% increase on the hangar fees. So over in Beaufort Executive Airport, that would increase their T hangars, which are small, just big enough to fit a small aircraft in, from $345 to $363. On Hilton Head, we have T hangars as well. They're currently at $462. We'd like to go up to $485. We have corporate hangars over at Hilton Head as well that fit larger scale aircraft. We're going from $1,373 to $1,442. And then we have a large box hangar. Formerly it was $2,815 to $2,956.
Any questions for Mr. Perry? And all that is in our documents for the changes and the current and what it wants to go to. Do we have a motion to approve that to County Council?
I'll make the motion.
Motion.
Or I'll second it.
And the second by Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
Any objection?
No.
With no objection, this will be moved forward. Item number 13, thank you, Mr. Perry. Recommendation of award to WSP for the Joe Frazier Road Corridor Study. And I believe we have Eric again. Sir.
Yes. Well, good afternoon again. This is to look at a corridor study, so this is kind of the kickoff to what we would look at for what that final improvement would look like. So this WSP has been asked or engaged by the county to look at Joe Frazier from Laurel Bay all the way through to 170, which a portion of Joe Frazier doesn't exist between Broad River Boulevard and 170, but then they're also doing an analyzation along Goethe Hill all the way over to 21. So looking at that entire corridor from capacity, safety, walkability perspective, they'll take all that into consideration. Then that will move forward then to a final design at a point in the near future. So again, the idea on this process, we go through this, we get this adopted by our planning commission along with you all on county council, and then we'll move towards that final design.
And this is around $214,000, so it's going to have to go to county council. Do we have a motion to move this forward?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I don't have no discussion. I'm a very visible person. You know, I like to work with my hands and what I see. A lot of times it shows me more than what I can read sometimes. I like to see, you know, I would love to have seen a map of what you're outlining here.
Yeah. Well, we can include that. There is more detail in your packet that
didn't
talks
see.
through the scope. and should show the limits of that project.
I didn't get it, but that's all right, okay,
Okay.
I'll look for it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and
Okay.
again, I'd be happy to bring a map, especially as we're talking about these larger corridor projects.
Yeah, could we just bring the map to when it goes to county council?
For sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. Any objection? Number 13 is also approved and moved on to county council.
We did.
We did. We had a motion and a
Seconded
second.
it.
No, I appreciate you. You gotta keep me in line. I already told them I'm gonna screw up at some point today. Item number 14, recommendation of an award to HDR Engineering Incorporated for US 21 Corridor Access Management Plan.
So again, similar to the last one, this is kind of the framework that we're starting off with to look at a corridor. We want to get ahead of any development that we're seeing along the corridor. This is in 21 from Gardens Corner down to Neal Street, which is pretty much where the Boundary Street improvements led off. So again, looking at access management, safety, pedestrian accommodations along that corridor. We're also asking them to look at a few specific locations, primarily at Laurel Bay and 21 for some safety improvements. We have those really long sweeping right turn lanes right now, so they're gonna look at that from a safety perspective. We hope to move a smaller piece of that project forward as a safety improvement ahead of the 2024 proposed sales tax. So again, that's just a piece of it, but this is looking at that entire corridor. Again, this is HDR, $217,992.92, which includes a 10% contingency. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question.
We have to have a motion before discussion?
Oh, okay. We can't ask questions first?
I think we have to have a motion first, don't we?
I'll make a
We've
motion.
been doing it both ways tonight.
I told you I'd mess up at some
Yeah,
point.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Perfect, thank
I
you.
have a question. At Laurel Bay, is that a
Yes.
hot spot for accidents? It used to be, I don't know if it still is.
So it's all part of the analysis.
Okay.
We are, I believe so. We're seeing some, especially with those right turn lanes, the one primarily coming off of Laurel Bay onto 21. So basically from northbound Laurel Bay to eastbound 21, we're seeing some crashes. Folks have to look over their shoulder as they're coming around. We're seeing that primarily be the reason for the crashes on that
Thank you.
location.
Mr. Chairman, oh, you somebody else?
Oh, it's all you?
No, this is the major thoroughfare for industries in Beaufort. So you're gonna take all that in consideration when you do this study?
Absolutely.
Because the economic, the industrial park is all on this corridor and stuff, so.
Correct, yeah, and we're seeing some movement in the way of development in and around Stewart Point. So we just want to make sure that as that occurs, we're ahead of any kind of growth and making sure we're defining where those logical traffic signals are placed, where access management is performed. So again, to get ahead of that development is what we're after.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any objection to send this forward to county council?
No.
This to be moved forward with no objection. Number 15, recommend approval of a resolution to use impact fees to retain HDR Engineering Incorporated to study, recommend, and design enhancements to Bluffton Parkway pedestrian accommodations and aesthetics, AKA Bluffton Parkway Enhancement Project.
Well, if you were gonna make a mistake, it wasn't on reading that piece, so.
I was
that's a
excited about
mouthful.
this one. What can I say?
That's a mouthful. So basically what this amounts to is prior to the 2024 sales tax, we want to showcase to the citizens of this county what a corridor could look like from everything from enhanced walkability, enhanced lighting, so trail lighting, overhead lighting, lighted traffic signal signs, as well as enhanced landscaping. So we're taking that half-mile section between River Ridge, or we're proposing between River Ridge and the Hampton Lakes signal to take that half mile and really showcase what we can do. So wider concrete trails on both sides of the street, enhanced pedestrian accommodations, crossings, all of the above. So again, anyone that's interested in what this could look like throughout the county, could look at that half-mile corridor. So that's the purpose behind that. So basically with this will be a final design that should be wrapped up before the end of this calendar year. We could then move into construction and have this done prior to October or so of 2024. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
A second? Any discussion?
Mr. John, I just note it's from impact fees, so I think that's great that we point out it's south of the broad impact fees. The folks need to know that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I have one question.
Yes,
Are you saying there's a chance?
No,
There's still no
Yeah.
chance.
there's a 10-foot pathway on one side and a 12-foot pathway on the other side.
So you're saying there's a chance?
you just can't
I'm
get
just,
over
I'm
it.
just giving
Okay.
geometry.
Any objection to move this forward to county council?
But you slipped that one right in.
Like that, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection?
No
No.
objection.
This moves forward with no objection.
Nice try.
Hey, there's always a final vote, you know. Number 16, recommended award to Kimley Horn for the ITS master plan.
So ITS stands for Intelligent Transportation System. So this is all the nerdy technology that goes along with addressing capacity needs throughout the county and really throughout the region. So just as you stated, this is a LATS project. So we're looking beyond Beaufort County. We're looking into Jasper County as well as Hardeeville as to what this looks like in the way of smart signals, dynamic message signs, travel time, just any of those safety and capacity needs that we can do through the technology perspective. That's what we're moving or looking towards. LATS is actually funding this project. They're funding 80% of the project. We have the local match, which is the 20%. So again, this is going to be the framework or the architecture that we'll be moving forward with. And again, looking for grant funding and every opportunity that we can for deployment. And again, that's really to look at this from not trying to build this out, adding more lanes. This is using technology to address capacity and safety. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
A motion?
So moved.
Second?
No second.
Perfect. I just wanted to point out quickly that, yeah, the county's only responsible for 55,000 of the 275,000, and LATS is covering the rest.
Correct.
I
Any other-
would just ask that you, for the audience or anybody who watches this, tell them what LATS is. It's another
Yeah,
acronym.
it's basically our regional MPO, so, yeah.
Which is
That's
a-
another-
And by
there you go.
MPO, I mean Metropolitan Planning
Planning
Organization,
Organization.
so,
Yeah.
again, it's basically set up in the urban areas of the county. So, looking at that 30,000-foot view for all transportation needs across the community. So, again, they look at a lot of these planning opportunities. They are somewhat short-staffed, so that's where the county is stepping in and assisting with that to make sure that we're moving these things along in a timely fashion.
All forms of transportation, like golf carts.
Here we go.
Recommend to move this forward to county council?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. See, I told you I messed it up. Any objection?
No.
And moves forward unobjected.
Just quickly,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is our chairman, Mr. Passerman, our representative on LATS? No,
Yeah.
who's on LATS for us?
Um,
It was Paul at
I
one-
am. Yeah,
You are?
I am on
Okay.
LATS, yes.
Okay.
Item number 17, recommendation of a contract to award Trinity Electrical for Hilton Head Island Air Traffic Control Tower technology improvements in the amount of $268,695.
Good afternoon again, it's me again. On Hilton Head Island Airport, one of the main functions of that airport is to provide safety to aircraft, commercial and general aviation. So an aircraft tower is probably, if not the most important, at least the second most important piece of facility that we have on Hilton Head Island Airport. In November of 2021, the bipartisan infrastructure law was passed. And part of that BIL was to provide funds for aging air traffic control towers, in which we have one of those. Ours was built in 2004, and all the equipment, the antennas, the radios, everything that the tower controllers utilize to communicate with aircraft are that old as well. So we applied for a grant from the BIL, and we were awarded $275,000 in 2022, early 2022. From that time, we had to put together a scope of work on what we intended on replacing and upgrading, which meant I needed to make sure that the most important pieces of equipment got first priority. Out of that, we put out a bid through purchasing, and we had one bidder, and that was Trinity, and they came back with a pretty substantial price tag, and I had to take that price tag, working with them, working with purchasing, and we had to drill that price tag down to get the most critical pieces of gear put on that bid. They came back at $268,695. They were the only ones to bid on that project. It's a niche community. It's hard to find people that can do that type of work. So Trinity is fully capable of doing that. And this is, I want to reiterate, this is 100% funded by the BIL. There is no airport match.
Good job.
We have a motion, move this forward to county council.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Any objection? This will go forward to county council. Thank you. Mr. Nasai. All right, item number 18, a recommendation of award to LSP3 for the design of the new Public Works building.
Afternoon, Chairman and committee members. So before you is action item to enter into contract with LS3P for design and architectural service for the new Public Works building. Just some background, back in 2021, Creech and Associates conducted the facility master plan and needs assessment. Based on that, there was some opportunity to identify a additional space for the Public Works facility that's on 120 Shanklin. We then proceeded back in the fall of 2020 to enter put out an RFP for advertisement. We were successful in getting 10 candidates to apply. From that, we had shortlisted down to 4, which we interviewed. Out of the 4, we selected based on the evaluation committee LS3P. The funding for this is coming out from the account that's listed that's been earmarked for this project. It includes the original scope plus the 10% contingency.
A motion, please?
I'll make a motion, to go forward with this.
Second.
Second. Any questions for Mr. Desai?
I'd just like to comment, this is long overdue
Sure
for
is.
Public Works. It will include a site, looking at different sites, or will it be on existing
The
property?
existing campus.
Okay, thank you.
Any objection? With no objection, this will be moved forward to county council. Thank you. Our last thing on the agenda today is an executive session. Pursuant to South Carolina Code SC 30-4-70A1, discussion of appointments of a persons to a public body, the Green Space Advisory Committee. Do I have a recommendation to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Second that.
And we will go into executive session. Oh, any objection? Sorry.
No. Good job.
Yeah, with no objection, we'll move.
And that's really where the story of Fort Fremont starts, with that huge Civil War military operations and installations on Hilton Head, on St. Helena Island, on Parris Island, and in Beaufort.
After the Civil War, we're going to see a massive change in technology that's going to revolutionize the military. During the Civil War, we had ironclad ships, we had rifled cannons, but they were all made out of iron, and they were not terribly effective. But its technology is going to change after the Civil War. We're going to see steel produced, and steel is much harder. So now we have a new material to make armor out of for ships. So we can have these armored ships made with steel that are much more resistant to shot. Because I have steel, I can make stronger barrels for my guns. I can rifle and machine these much better, and the rifling is the spirals that are cut in the barrel that allows it to shoot further with more accuracy. And we can also now have breech loading guns that can lock from behind, so I can load my gun from behind. I don't have to go have the old black powder muzzle loading cannon I had before. Now I can fire much more rapidly. If I compare the gun of 1890 to the guns of 1860, for the same caliber, the same diameter gun, the 1890 gun will be able to fire a projectile that's 4 times heavier, can shoot it 3 times further, can put it in with greater precision, and can put it through much more armor than anything we had in the 1860s. It's a world difference. A military historian, E.R. Lewis, would say that the change between the Civil War and 1890 in artillery technology was the greatest that would be seen since the invention of artillery in the 14th century to the introduction of the nuclear projectile in the 1950s. So there's been a huge change in gun technology. At the same time, it's not just the steel, but also the powder that fires these guns is different. We have new chemical makeup, and sort of like cordite is invented now, and it's still a widely used military explosive even today. Smokeless powder is invented during this period of time. And it's not just chemical composition, but it's the details of how you make the grain, how fast they burn. So much like the skill of firing a solid rocket, solid fuel rocket, it's that same kind of technology that's been developed in these gunpowder and this new powder. So our weapons of this day are much, much greater. They would be the great killing machines of World War I. Most of the casualties on the battlefields of World War I would come from artillery. So the world has seen a huge change in artillery, and that's tied into changes in ships. We now have steel armored ships. They're all steam powered. They are now equipped with these fine long-range guns, and they now become the dominant threat of the late 19th, early 20th century. This is the threat. The French and the English would bombard cities like Cairo and reduce them to rubble because they were unable to defend them. So this is how the world was seeing the threat from this new technology. Big battleships are the threat of the era, and new guns and fortifications on the ground are what you have to defend against them.
One of the most important and first things that happened after the Civil War is they built a railroad to Port Royal Sound, which didn't exist. It was the first connection of the Sea Islands to the mainland. And the advantage of that railroad is it brought coal to Port Royal Sound. So when the coal was delivered, the Navy followed.
In 1872, Robert Smalls was in the South Carolina legislature, and he pushed through a resolution to the Secretary of War calling for them to put a Navy station on Parris Island. And eventually he would go on to Congress, where he would continue his support for a Navy station here in the Beaufort-Port Royal area. They eventually opened a Navy station here and a coaling station.
They created in the 1890s on Parris Island the largest dry dock in the United States. This is the period when the U.S. Navy was switching from sail to steam. All the navies of the world needed a coaling station. This was the principal coaling station, because of the railroad, for the Caribbean and South American U.S. fleets.
This would be the biggest dry dock south of Norfolk. In fact, it is the only dry dock south of Norfolk, Virginia, that's capable of taking these new modern battleships and these new modern armored cruisers. So this becomes, at this point, a strategic Navy base in that it provides coal, and it provides top-line support to the ships, and they can repair the hulls of even the biggest ships in the U.S. Navy. Following the Civil War, national strategy and emphasis in the United States shifted to recovery from war, and all of our coastal fortifications went into neglect. The military was busy taming the West, and coastal defenses became something that was no longer important. In the rest of the world, technology is moving forward, and they're developing these battleships, they're developing new high-quality artillery, and this is going on worldwide. And in 1885, President Grover Cleveland appointed the Endicott Board. This was headed by Secretary of War Endicott, William Endicott, and the board would meet and issue a report in 1886, and they said that the conditions of our coastal defenses were just unbearable. They cannot be allowed to stay like that. And they made recommendations for fortification and improvements. They identified 29 places that needed fortifications, and 11 of which were critical. In that list of 29, Savannah and Charleston are on the list, but Beaufort is not on the list. It'll take international events to bring Beaufort into the play of modern fort technology.
So the USS Maine was here on patrol and in the harbor, and while they were in the harbor several times, they entertained the local population. So the merchants and the social leaders and the political leaders of Beaufort were invited to come have lunch with the captain of the ship, Captain Sigsbee. And the officers got to know the people got to know the officers. The crew, which was large, would go ashore on payday and make friends with everybody in town. So it was a very social arrangement between the towns, Port Royal and Beaufort, and the ship. So the Maine left here, it went and reprovisioned, it refueled in Key West, and then went the 90 miles across to Havana into the harbor and blew up.
This inflamed the already hot passions both in Cuba and here in the United States. At that point, somebody in the War Department realized that we had this big dry dock, the only dry dock in the South that could take on and repair these big capital ships that were in our Navy. We were going to start operations against a power in the Caribbean, and this fort was totally undefended. And that's what put Fort Fremont on the map. We had to have a fort here to defend the coaling station and especially this big dry dock, as well as this fine harbor that's here.
And of course, that event, which killed 300 or more sailors on the ship, was very much followed by the local news media and very much lamented by the many friends that the crew had made here. The destruction of the USS Maine was a personal matter to Beaufort and to Port Royal Sound. And of course, it was the Spanish-American War and the attempt to defend this harbor again, which led to the creation of Fort Fremont. The United States declared war on Spain in April 1898.
And by early May, we had temporary batteries in place here, submarine mines were in place, and in the summer they would actually place the mines across the Beaufort River behind me. The temporary batteries were a temporary expedient. They were located to my left about 1,000 yards. They immediately began construction of what would become Fort Fremont. The large batteries would house the large guns. Battery 4 Nance, the rapid-fire guns, the smaller battery was completed by June of 1898.
In 1898, everybody in town went to war. They had a naval militia unit, South Carolina Naval Militia Unit, and they were absorbed by the Navy. Many of them ran tugboats from here to New York to Key West, which was the principal support base, Tampa and Key West, for the U.S. Army operations in Cuba.
Peace was declared by the end of 1898, and the remainder of Fort Fremont would not be finished until early 1899, and the first soldiers would arrive from the regular Army at that point in March 1899.
Well, Fort Fremont was named for Major General John Fremont. He was actually a local boy, so to speak. He was born and grew up in Savannah, Georgia, just south of us, and went to college in the College of Charleston, up just north of us in Charleston. He served in the Army, and primarily initially as a explorer, as Army forts were generally named for Army officers, and he was connected locally. This is more than likely why the fort was named for him.
The fort was constructed on a site directly across the river from the Parris Island Naval Station. And the site selected was 170 acres, which included the two artillery batteries, Fort Fremont. But then adjacent to the battery site was an administrative quadrangle, a very typical military type administrative square.
We are sitting in the number 3 gun position of a 3-gun battery, Battery Jessup, which had 3 10-inch disappearing carriage, large caliber guns, breech loading guns. Their purpose was to engage the warships that might be entering the harbor and Port Royal Sound. We're here now at the